Some breaking news. There's a major development in the Middle East. Israeli officials tell the Associated Press that a new plan has been approved to seize all the territory in Gaza and then occupy it indefinitely. MTS Tayeb has the latest for you from London. MTS, good morning to you.
Gail, good morning. Well, the approval by Israel's cabinet of the plan.
About Three Worlds by Avi Shlaim, the entirety of the first chapter is basically him saying the Iraqis were victims of Zionism and missed their home after they were pushed due to Arab nationalism, but pulled to Israel due to Zionism. He talks about a nostalgia for Baghdad his grandparents had when they were forced to go to Israel. Yeah, also Israel was like pretty ruthless to a lot of the Arab Jews initially. Like, was it Ben Gurion who said that they're like lower than dust or something, like they're desert people? Ashkenazi Jews initially were not very fond of. Ashkenazi Jews weren't very fond of like the Arab Jews initially. Like there was the same dynamic of like Western, unironic Western white supremacist thought internally within Israel as well. This is part of the reason why a lot of the most rabid supporters of the state of Israel are often Arab Jews, like Itamar Ben-Gvir, also from Iraq, Arab Kurdish Jew Itamar Ben-Gvir. I just had Turkish food on your recommendation for the first time the other day. Goddamn, don't add bulgur ekmek baklava. That shit slaps so hard. Yeah, it's fantastic. All right, let's lock in. Let's talk about the serious. Let's talk about the serious subject matter. Remember, in a few years ago, when people were screaming that Israel would never want to occupy Gaza since they left in 2005? Yeah. No, you don't understand. It's because they October 7, they have to. They're just forced. They had their hands forced.
Dramatic shift in this already brutal and grinding war, and comes as the Israeli military called up tens of thousands of reservist soldiers just this weekend. If implemented, hundreds of thousands of already displaced Palestinians will be pushed to southern Gaza, only worsening an already dire humanitarian crisis. For 2 months now, Israel has blocked all food, water, and medicine from entering the Palestinian territory, triggering what aid agencies are calling the worst humanitarian crisis there since the violence began nearly 1.5 years ago.
I think one of the lesser considered aspects of this conversation from Israel, which is now pushing for the final solution, by the way, they want to ethnically cleanse a majority child population that they've starved out for the past 2 months. Okay, remember, this is a majority children population. There's a reason why 70% of their 70% of the people that they kill are either children, women, or the elderly, because that's just what the population is. Okay, so after starving them, destroying their cities in its entirety, and starving them for 2 months, now they're going to go in and do a full-blown military occupation. And obviously, this is Nazi stuff. I mean, this is the Holocaust. This is the final solution. They are doing it in broad daylight, and they're doing it within the legal confines that they've created for themselves. Just like the Nazis, what they were doing to the Jews were legal by their own estimations, by their own designs, when they implemented the Nuremberg race laws, right? So it's terrifying. The one thing I will say, where you get these numbers though, what do you think, this is a gotcha? Like, what do you mean? I get them from the health ministry and also numerous other NGOs and also the United Nations. Like, where do you, anyway, yeah, they're doing a final solution on Gaza. They're doing a final solution on the Palestinians there. The one aspect that is less covered in this matter, however, is if they even have the military strength to be able to do this. Do they have the numbers to do this? I know that there is definitely a lot of appetite from people in the war cabinet, for sure, especially the more radical elements within the war cabinet. But I don't know if there is enough manpower at this stage, but I have not checked in. I haven't been looking at the numbers of or the drama that's happening with like forcible conscripts or the reservists not returning to duty. Because at a certain point, at a certain point, they're gonna have a hard time filling the ranks. In order to do a permanent military occupation, you have to fill the ranks. And I don't know if they have enough manpower. I genuinely don't know if they have enough manpower to do so, or if they have enough appetite to do so. Because like, there's a lot of people who just want to go back to their regular lives. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people who are like, okay, I've done enough child murder. Like, can I please go back to my marketing job? Like, I miss my family. You know what I mean? The impact of all of that violence will also only be seen in a decade. We haven't even gotten there yet. You know how we have the 22 vets a day number in the United States of America? Some of the heinous shit that the Israeli occupying force has done in Gaza is like an Abu Ghraib every day. So that number is going to be far higher. Like, this is going to have inevitably karmic damage or cosmic damage in the form of karmic justice to Israel for sure. So there is no, like, I mean, you can bomb these buildings over and over again, these hollowed out buildings over and over again. But like, inevitably, if you want to do a military occupation, you need manpower. If you have manpower, there is going to be resistance against said manpower. There is going to be tunnel warfare, guerrilla warfare. Once again, Hamas has replenished its ranks, right? And then you got the Al-Qassam brigades. You got all of these other like militancy formations that are going to inevitably take out soldiers over and over again. And I don't think that Israel has the capacity to keep that operation up with straightforward manpower, like just boots on the ground military manpower, without American intervention. So therein lies the question: does America intervene? Do we see the United States of America actually invade Gaza? Is that what they're going to do? Because I don't think Israel has the capacity. I don't think Israel has the capacity to continue the war. Obviously, cost of Gaza war escalation could top 15.4 billion, threatening Israeli budget stability. You have port shutdowns, obviously. You're right. I'm a 9/11 era vet that didn't even see combat, but I have friends who died in Afghanistan. People like us are anti-American. But it's not even just that. Like, a lot of the breaking the silence guys are unironically people that have actually participated in sieges in Gaza, and then that made them incredibly grossed out to the whole design. And that was like their wake-up call. But having said that, we also have the PTSD side of things. Like, this is signaling societal collapse, especially when you consider that the Israeli population numbers are constantly fulfilling itself, like filling up the ranks with the Haredi population. They're having like 6 to 8 kids. Okay. Those guys don't have to serve in the military, but those guys are also not getting the proper education that Israel wants to show to the Western world, that they are like, just like France or, just like any other normal Western country. We have arts. We celebrate education, we celebrate the arts, we celebrate scientific accomplishments and whatnot. So like, if the only people that don't have PTSD that remain in Israel, that's like becoming the next generation of Israel, are all young Haredi Jews who only get a religious education, then like the societal makeup of Israel is going to dramatically change. Do you see what I mean? And you don't get to benefit from a steady flow of Western intervention and Western aid and Western support and an expenditure of Western political capital in defense of your genocide if your country doesn't look Western. I feel like they will inevitably lose their favored client status if they can't keep up an incredibly sophisticated influence peddling operation simultaneously. Did you just replacement theory Israel? No, because it's not replacement theory. It's more so, I mean, it is a little bit like getting mad at idiocracy for having a eugenicist slant, but it's idiocracy. We're experiencing that here in the United States of America as well. But it is kind of like idiocracy where, yeah, the guys that are having a lot of children that allow Israel to no longer have, to allow Israel to not have any sort of like birth rate decline. Those guys don't serve. They don't serve. They don't go to the same schools. They don't care about education in the same way. They have very different opinions on like women's position in society. And the more Israel becomes a majority Haredi population, which is, it's not there yet, but the more Israel becomes like a majority Haredi population like that, the less likely it is that it can keep up its sophisticated espionage operations, or even sophisticated influence peddling operations in the West. As an ex-Haredi, I can assure you we receive little to no education. Yeah, it's mostly just like religious education, right? So it's I mean, it's just they're cooked. They're cooked regardless, if that makes sense. I mean, the West supports Saudi Arabia, and there aren't Western looking in any way, to be honest. If you think that like Saudi Arabia is a weapon to wield against Yemen, okay? As long as it is a part of the defense initiative that defends Israel's interests in the region, as long as it has a shit ton of oil. But Saudi Arabia is not a favored client state in the same way that Israel is. No country is a favored client state in the same way that Israel is. Saudi Arabia is just an important bulwark against Iranian intervention in the region because Iran is outside of our sphere of influence. The double irony here, of course, is that we are trying to Israelify the United States of America. A lot of our politicians look to Israel's fascism and say, we like that. We want that here. We should do more of that, please. Like, there is a truly terrifying number of politicians who I think unironically look to the design of Israeli society and where it has gone over the course of the past couple of decades and has decided this is good. We should do this, but for Christianity, Christian Sharia, you know? Israel is less a client and more the USA's pet, I feel. Yes. I mean, it's not the favored client nation status is just like a designation. It's an official an unofficial designation. What the Yemen do to piss off so many people, it is not in the sphere of Western influence. It is in the sphere of Iranian influence. That's it. That's the major issue.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has promised to respond to the attack, saying Iran would also face consequences from the strike.
Yeah, they have to pull Iran into this. And Iran has demonstrated restraint over and over again. Or some analysts will say Iran uses the Houthis as a way to respond to Israel, as a way to retaliate against Israel. But Iran overall has demonstrated major restraint throughout this process. That much is obviously clear, especially in comparison to what Israel is doing. The only time Israel actually shows restraint is when they're trying to retaliate against Iran, ironically enough. But the reality of the matter is Israel needs to bring Iran into the fold because there are two reasons for that. One, I think this is a part of America's grand design in the region. I think this is definitely a part of America's grand design because Iran, if there were two poles on the planet with two hegemonic powers competing against one another, they're going to need energy, and China needs to get it from Iran if they can't get it from the regular OPEC Plus group. And America's number one goal in the next 20 to 10 year timeline is to take this war directly to China. That's part of the reason why they want to pack up the whole Russia-Ukraine stuff. And that's precisely the reason why they're letting Israel go absolute monster mode everywhere in the region so that they can do this big destabilization and then restabilization with Israeli design, like restabilization where a lot of these areas are under firm Israel security commitments and Israel control, so that they can have some semblance of security and some semblance of stability, rather, for American national interests, and maybe even exert influence, exert pressure over our allies there to cut off the energy supply to China. That is the goal. That's why I also say American foreign policy will swing sometimes wildly, but it's often still directionally in the same, it's always directionally in the same agenda, towards the same agenda, but there are obviously differences in opinion along the way. Oftentimes it's the Republicans that push it even further and further right, more to more insane places, and then the Democrats don't do anything to pull it back because they also are in line with the same agenda. So is Pallywood just a modern day Nazi propaganda, or is that a little too far? No, it's not far. I look, it's up to you guys. You need to be very well equipped when you're talking about Israel-Palestine related things in order not to come across like you're anti-Semitic, because a lot of the language, even on accident, can come across like that. And I perfectly understand that, which is why I wouldn't recommend to the average person to make this comparison, because most people still at this stage will be like, whoa, I don't know about that. That's crazy. But I do not shy away from making the comparison of Israel and Nazi Germany, because I think we have definitely reached that level. But, you know, the less incisive language you can use is just to say it's fascist, because it is fascist, just like the Nazis. It is exterminationist. It is built on supremacist ideology, just like the Nazis were. But, you know, I don't think it's in any way, shape, or form inappropriate to make this comparison. Like, as a Jewish person, I always compare Israel to the Nazis. Yeah. NATO officials came to Japan recently to beg us to make more weapons and build up the SDF supposedly for Russia, but I think it's the goal of fighting China too. No, it's definitely the goal of fighting China.
We hope that everyone will stand with us to stop this bloodshed and stop this extermination. We are people who love life. We are people who hope that the war will stop and that we will live in peace, security and safety.
This is the human cost of an offensive that is set to intensify if Israel carries out its new plan to seize more of the Strip. The Israeli military already controls around half of Gaza, as well as corridors dividing the region.
Yeah.
Government officials have reportedly said the new offensive will now capture the entire territory. This would mean pushing the population back south again.
This is what we will do. We will move the population for its own protection.
The Israeli Prime Minister suggested the military would not retreat from...
Bro, am I crazy, or does he look more like Hitler every day? I don't know what is going on here, but like, with the exception, obviously, because he's clean cut, he doesn't do the mustache shit, but like his hair, like, I swear to God, he's like Hitlerifying in front of our eyes. I think it's the haircut. Like, he straight up looks like Hitler would look like if he just shaved this dumbass mustache. You know what I mean? Like, is he just like what's going on there? Is he trying to be like, haha, what are you gonna do about it? That's me. Tolstoy could never imagine particles to this degree. No, it's not Tolstoy, it's Trotsky. Tolstoy. It was Trotsky who said Hitler particles. What evil does to a... I mean, yeah. War and Peace by Leon Trotsky. I mean, that dude loved to write too, but anyway.
From areas they raid. The plan would also impact the distribution of aid under conditions expected to be set by the Israeli military.
This would violate the humanitarian principles of neutrality, impartiality, and independence, and could also put people at risk by, including aid workers, by having them around these militarized zones.
This is Israel ahead of President Trump's visit next week. Although some believe Israel's government is attempting to place pressure on Hamas, these families and their allies fear for the impact on their loved ones. 59 taken hostage in Israel by Hamas remain in Gaza, and artillery does not ask for ID.
I'm not gonna lie, dude. It blows my mind what is going on, because like, if there were no hostages right now in Gaza, I think the dynamic would look very different. Like, I think that there wouldn't even be any protests. Like, I know that there are people in Israel, like, I think over time, standing together, like a lot of the liberal Zionists that are even in movements like Standing Together either went full tilt Kahanist or went in the opposite direction and became more firm in their conviction against like Israel's genocide. But their numbers are nothing in comparison to the broader Israeli society. Like, this is what I have seen from my own personal experiences, from what I've seen in the Western world, but what I've seen also in Israel as well. And I'm sure some of the Israeli Hasanabi heads could confirm or deny this. I don't know. But like there, after October 7, a lot of the liberal Zionists that were at the peak of like the Israeli liberal coalition that was like, oh, let's do peace. Let's do a 2-state solution. Let's do, let's hold hands with the Palestinians and sing Kumbaya. But also like, let's, people that have protested, people that have demonstrated over and over again, not talking about the anti-Zionists, okay? But people that have protested and demonstrated, which is one of the more popular, one of the larger movements basically in Israel. A lot of those guys I was checking in were going crazy. They were baying for blood, okay? They were just going wild, right? And then it's like over time, I think as the depravity of the military operations became clear for some got way more radicalized in the opposite direction, and others and others became, I think, more committed to anti-Zionism than they ever did before. But those numbers are tiny still. They're marginal. So without hostages, because like the mass movements that happen in Israel, the largest category of like anti-government protests that are coming from hostage families and their friends and people that want a ceasefire specifically to take out the hostages. Those people have been polled in the past as well. And when they actually get polled, they still say like, no, just keep the war going after, but just like get our hostages out. And Benjamin Netanyahu, on the other hand, will not commit to even doing that, which is why a lot of people are very frustrated. There's the reason why in Israeli media, especially with the last ceasefire was taking place, there were family members of Israeli hostages that were writing letters to Benjamin Netanyahu being like, you are the reason why this deal is not taking place, which was correct. You are bringing up idiotic additional spoilers into the ceasefire negotiation, like not removing military presence from the Philadelphia corridor, the Rafah border crossing with Egypt, right? Like all of this stuff that they added on to the deal over and over again was specifically done so that Netanyahu could always say, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to actually do a ceasefire. And I think, I don't know what the dynamic would look like. Israel's made peace deals with Palestine 5 times up until October 7th. Yeah, those aren't real peace deals, brother. What are we talking about? This is like pre-October 7 Hasbara is where we're at now. What do you mean? Like, what's the logical conclusion of this argument that you're trying to present here? That like they did peace deals with Palestine and Palestinians couldn't keep up their end on those peace deals, so they must be ethnically cleansed. Is that your argument? Can you say your conclusion? Yeah, see? Exactly. Because Palestine didn't want peace. Remember, chatters, the dynamic is always the same, okay? Here's what happens. There's a siege that takes place. They wipe out like 100 to 1,000 people. They blow up a bunch of buildings. Then they fuck off, Israel does, okay? And then there is a treaty. There's a ceasefire treaty. Israel then continues doing what it's doing in the West Bank, which is, of course, ruining the lives of the Palestinians under this illegal occupation, where they keep harming them, especially during Ramadan, where they'll actively go out of their way to disrupt travel to the mosque, disrupt the lives of Palestinians that are literally engaging in the act of just going to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and praying. And that provocation is always like there before that provocation happens, knowing full well that provocation is going to happen, okay? Knowing full well that provocation is going to happen, Hamas will release a statement. They will say, don't do this, okay? Do not do this. And then Israel will do it anyway. And then Hamas will turn around and lob a couple rockets that immediately get intercepted by Iron Dome. Israel will use that as an opportunity to do another siege. This is what this man is talking about when he says Hamas always disrupts peace negotiations or whatever. It's not true. Okay? Hold on. This guy woke up thinking it's October 8th, giving us all the talking points. No, he woke up thinking it's October 6th, ironically enough. Also, it is pretty funny to say this because if this kind of this kind of rhetoric was incredibly effective in the Western world for years. Palestinians were no partner in peace, they said, right? No, I just see one side hating the other, and the other having to defend itself. Yeah, that is what's going on. That is actually what's going on. One side is defending itself, and that side is the Palestinians. And the side that's hating them is Israel. So you're actually not wrong. You've flipped the dynamic and it's on its head. Because you have sympathies for Israel. I get it. Like, I know where this comes from. You're wrong, but I understand why you're wrong. Anyway, the thing I wanted to mention here is more so about propaganda and how it works. Okay? Pre-October 7, if you tried to describe how disruptive Israel was in these numerous ceasefire negotiations where they never actually gave a fair deal, and they never actually wanted to implement any sort of fair deal whatsoever. Okay? If you were to describe that to people, they would not understand it. They'd be like, what do you mean? Bill Clinton even said that it was, Palestinians that were just no partner in peace. But now every single person in this community at least, has seen the exact ways in which the depraved, morally repugnant American administration lies at the behest of Israel and how Israel behaves throughout the ceasefire negotiation process. So now you know, because you saw it over the course of the past year and a half. You saw exactly how Israel operates in these negotiations, and you saw exactly how the American government runs cover for Israel throughout these ceasefire negotiations. So looking at what has unfolded over the last year and a half will give you a better understanding of the reasons as to why previous ceasefire negotiations or any sort of pathway towards peace was completely cast aside by the responsible party, Israel. Do you understand? This is also why it's like a lot of the old Hasbara doesn't work. A lot of the old Hasbara doesn't work anymore. And it's not just because people can see directly what Israel is doing, but a lot of the old Hasbara doesn't work anymore because people have just become more aware. Like, people have become more aware of the way that Israel has operated throughout the past year and a half. And that completely eviscerates all of the carefully calculated, ahistorical ways in which this process has been taught to those who even care to learn about it in America. Hassan, I'm scared. You figured it out and you're loud about it. I'm scared for your safety. No, but the irony is, this is what I've been saying for years. This isn't new. It's just a lot of people have only recently figured it out. That's it. That's it. I've heard Israel is faking AI voice notes in Syria to put Druze against the Syrian government. I don't know about that. Is Israel's justification for their plan to seize Gaza that it's necessary to save the hostages? No. Ironically enough, they've completely given up on even entertaining that idea. They've given up on even doing propaganda in that direction. They completely dropped it. They openly said, last week, Benjamin Netanyahu came out and said, hostages are secondary to our much larger, much more consequential plan of complete extermination of Hamas. Hostage negotiations are a hurdle. And he actually said it literally a day after Ethan and Sam argued against one another. After Ethan was like, oh, well, if Hamas released all the hostages, then, Israel would stop. Yeah. Ethan is about to go live. I'm a Fallen fan. I can't believe Ethan actually won the debate against Sam Cedar and you. It's shocking. Hassan, shocking. Thank you, tiny person. It is shocking. Many things are shocking to you, I think, if you feel that way. Like, oh my God, why is there a big ball in the sky that comes out every morning? That is scary. Is that fire? What is fire? Shocking. Yeah. I mean, this basically came out like a day after Sam and Ethan had that conversation. Netanyahu says destroying Hamas more important than free hostages, which, again, if you were paying any attention to the dynamic at all, you would have recognized that. You would have recognized that months ago. We are finally going to conquer Gaza. We are no longer afraid of the word occupation, Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich told a pro-settler conference in an online discussion. Israel may seize all of Gaza in expanded operation, officials say. Summary. Door open for ceasefire talks as Trump heads to the region. Military will hold territories it seizes, Israeli officials say. Blockade remains on aid for now. Tens of thousands of reservists will be called up. Humanitarian agencies condemn Israel's new aid plans. See, there's also an incredibly nefarious side of this, which is that they are going to do something that is totally illegal that they wanted to do in the past as well under the Biden administration. Apparently, according to reporting that I read on it, at least, even the Biden administration was like, you can't do that. They want to distribute aid with the military. They want to control who gets aid in the Gaza Strip. That in and of itself is insane. I mean, this is literally Russia shit, okay? This is what the American government was like yelling to Russia about over and over again. I mean, it's not any, like, even the Russian annexation occupation was a bloody affair. It was incredibly deadly, but like at no point is there not regular commerce happening, right? No, it's not even American shit. No, it's not even American shit. This is worse. I'm telling you, this is worse than Russia shit. This is worse than America shit. This is straight up like picking and choosing who gets to eat food. Like, it's absolutely worse than Russia shit. It is absolutely worse than America shit. This is stuff that, I mean, it's Nazi shit. Yeah, Israel's government has approved a sweeping plan to seize all of Gaza, indefinitely occupy its territory, and displace its population southward, advancing what rights groups warn is a military-engineered campaign of ethnic cleansing. Military conquest, indefinite control. The Security Cabinet unanimously backed the plan by Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir to capture the Strip and hold the territories, escalate attacks, and block Hamas from accessing humanitarian aid. The plan also includes moving the Gazan population to south for its defense and intensifying bombing campaigns. There's no timeline for withdrawal. I also want to mention something. I didn't really cover this as much. I didn't really cover this aspect as much, but like the Israeli military, by way of infiltration and sabotage, has armed criminal elements within the Gaza Strip. Okay? They've given them like NATO weapons in the Gaza Strip to go and run rampant on the aid. Hamas, as of, I believe, last night, actually publicly executed numerous criminal gang members and implemented a 9 p.m. curfew because the Israel-backed gangs would cause chaos in an effort to stop aid distribution, what remains of the aid that was being distributed. This, of course, on top of blowing up food refinery facility, like grain silos, like blowing up the last areas where there is any food whatsoever. 2 months of complete blockade on aid entering the Gaza Strip. The trucks full of aid are just sitting on the border. They are not letting them enter the Strip. How do you know the gangs are Israel backed? Oh, great question. The reason why I know the gangs are Israel backed is because obviously there's going to be criminal elements regardless, but according to the reporting from the remaining Palestinian journalists that are still alive at this point, every single time there was gang activity, there would be drones around, and they never actually shot at the at the dudes with guns in broad daylight. So tell me, the very same Israel that literally has implemented killing fields, the very same Israel that shoots at humanitarian aid workers that are engaging in the process of deconfliction with the Israeli Defense Force, the very same Israel that has killed World Central Kitchen aid workers, the very same Israel that's killed 15 medical workers from the Palestinian Red Crescent, that Israel sees dudes running around with guns and does not kill them. What does that mean? There's drones all around that offer protective cover. Yeah, Israel wants local clans to run Gaza after the war, but the candidates are refusing. Jerusalem is trying to forge a path to non-Hamas governance, but but hope of working with Strip's powerful families dampen the fears of retribution as terror groups still dominant. We are not collaborators. Israel should stop these games. Reuters, the plan for post-war Gaza that Israel has pitched to U.S. allies is to run the Strip in cooperation with powerful local families. But there's a problem. In a place where Hamas still wields ruthless influence, none want to be seen as talking to the enemy. Jerusalem is under pressure from Washington to wind down its military offensive nearly 9 months after October 7 Hamas massacre inside Israel, but does not want the Palestinian terror group to remain in charge after the fighting ends. Israeli officials have therefore been trying to plot a path ahead for the day after the fighting stops. This is all the way back from the 2nd of July, 2024, by the way. Yeah, this is the other side of the story. Yes, new. Armed gangs are looting food warehouses across Gaza, and Israeli drones are reportedly targeting the police and volunteers trying to stop them. Multiple sources, including eyewitnesses and journalists, say the gangs are backed by Israel. Here's what's being reported. Tarek Azam, Gaza correspondent for Al Jazeera English, reports local gangs reportedly backed by Israel are looting what remains of Gaza's food warehouses. Israeli forces, he says, have struck police officers who were trying to stop the thefts. One of the first-hand accounts comes from a volunteer at a community kitchen in western Gaza. He says armed gangs attacked their facility. Attacked their facility twice in one day. The second time, they fired live rounds and broke into a food store serving 1,500 plus families. Now, what's really interesting about this, once again, is that Israel says Hamas is doing this, except Hamas has punished the criminal gangs that have done this. They executed a bunch of them and then implemented a curfew as of last night, 9 p.m. curfew in the Gaza Strip as of last night. If you recall, there was a lot of chaos at the point of humanitarian aid being delivered into the Gaza Strip at numerous occasions, okay? And I remember covering the story where there was the time when they shot at the aid delivery, and then the aid delivery trucks like had to get out of the way, like they just there was a stampede. And they did the flour truck massacre, if you remember. And I believe right after the flour truck massacre, the Gazan police force, the civil, like the civil part of the civil governance division, the civilian population, okay, not like Hamas's militant wing, not the Al-Qassam brigades or anything like that. The Gazan police force actually came in and said, we are going to implement a process here. So they literally they designed a way for the humanitarian aid to be distributed in a organized manner. The next day, Israel killed the police chief. The next day, they went in. There was a single file line. Everyone was getting their aid and getting out. The next day, Israel killed the police chief and then said he was Hamas. The next day. Why would they do that? They did that because they want this chaos to exist. They do that because they want there to be a constant sense of pressure and violence and chaos and to never stop that. No order, none of that whatsoever. This is part of the reason why I say October 7 aside, okay, the atrocities that took place on October 7 aside, which were conducted by a collaborative effort on all the Palestinian factions, the entirety of the Palestinian militant resistance. Okay, after October 7, since Israel's genocide started, or at least accelerated, if you want to call it that, everything that Hamas has done in that time frame has been legally permissible, with the exception of maintaining hostages. That's it. Brother, the things you're saying is really sad and disgusting, man. What the this is disgusting. Are you saying like what Israel is doing is disgusting? Like hearing about it makes you sad? Is that what you mean? Or are you saying that like the statements that I'm making are disgusting because they're untrue or something? Because this is, yes, that is correct, Israel. Oh no, he's saying like it's making me sad because what Israel is doing is disgusting. Okay, got it. Hassan, can you tell me where I can do research on this stuff independently and get the same info as you? I think you can, I mean, Drop Site News is very good. They're incredible on their reporting. Al Jazeera has fantastic reporting on this stuff. Every now and then, I mean, look at the news sources that I look at. Like, I when I'm covering this stuff, when I'm covering every news story, whether domestic or foreign, I look at virtually every single type of news outlet that's out there, all the way from far right news outlets to liberal Zionist newspapers, all the way to anti-Zionist publications, and places like Democracy Now, places like DropSite that do fantastic investigative reporting that work with journalists on the ground. But the humanitarian aid plan that they're presenting as a humanitarian aid plan is literally to hire mercenaries tied to Israeli leaders, not aid groups. Israel wants to create de facto internment zones. Israel wants to set it up in Rafah, a city it already destroyed and depopulated. It's not real humanitarian aid. It is just simply another mechanism of ethnic cleansing. Investigative journalist Mohammed El Zanin has documented 3 Israeli drones in a single hour on patrols attempting to stop the looting at El Tawra and Al Wahda streets in Gaza City. Those targeted, he reports, were community volunteers and local police. So these guys, in their endless resilience, Palestinians in their endless resilience, are trying to do their very best to maintain some kind of civil order within a ghettoized part of within an open air concentration camp that is currently being bombed by its belligerent occupier. And in that process, they're literally still trying to kill the people that are trying to create some semblance of order so that less people die from famine. DropSite interviews the Hamas official not that long ago. So does that make them terrorist supporters too? Clown shit. No, don't listen to people that say stuff like that. Okay. When people hit the "you're a terrorist, you support terrorism, we must deplatform you," they're just trying to shut you up. Okay. Or specifically me. They're trying to shut me up because they're worried that people are recognizing the events that are unfolding. Okay. That's it. They don't want to actually tackle the conversation. They don't want to actually have a hard to deal with conversation. They just want to say, you are dangerous. You're a dangerous person. You're a terrorist. Stop talking. My brother's an Asman watcher and he's fallen for the Hassan as a terrorist supporter BS. We argued about that this morning. This is funny. Hassan Parker thinks being a man is simple. Tel Aviv Institute, delete this. Yeah, exactly. They do not want to have a nuanced discussion. They do not want to have a conversation. They do not want to talk about like any kind of militant resistance against a nation state that is doing apartheid. Hassan is the king of Darvo. I don't even know what Darvo means. It's like something that narcissistic boyfriends do, right? Isn't that what it is? Yes. My coverage on this issue, my coverage on this stuff is actually just like your shitty ex-boyfriend. You're right. Thank you. What is this? For the record, if you're wondering what real anti-Semitism looks like, it's this. What is this? What happened? Advertise on Twitch? Oh my God, dude. This is so stupid. This is so unimaginably stupid. Yeah, I'm like, I wonder why they won't show the video, dude. That's crazy. Dan Stalkman, dude. It's simple. DARVO is an acronym for Deny, Attack, Reverse, Victim, and Offender. Using pictures the same as everyone trying to justify Elon's on video, Twitter, Nazi salutes, and others mid-wave. What? That makes it seem like people are nefarious and not just ignorant. My dad told me I'm a terrorist supporter, but I don't think he has any idea what Islamophobia even looks like, even though he's massively Islamophobic. Oh, no, for sure. I knew someone was going to clip you out of context. Bro, they didn't even clip me out of context. They just literally screen grabbed something to make it seem as though, like, this doesn't say anything. You have to literally think, oh, this guy must like this. There's so much motivated reasoning here. Yeah, I saw that H3 Productions also posted it. This Hassan stream could be a disaster for Twitch and Amazon. One thing I haven't seen many people yet, this controversy around Hassan's stream title and content could create real problems for Twitch and by extension Amazon. Yes, dude. This is going to be really controversial for Amazon, which is literally me covering a anti-Semitic incident. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing accountability. Hassan should really stop covering anti-Semitism. My Hebrew school was being anti-Semitic when they taught me about the Nazis and the swastikas. Yeah. I tried to argue with people on X today who said Ethan smoked you in that debate. No, don't. You don't have to do that. Yeah, I found something out about Tectone recently as well, which I thought was very crazy. But we'll get into that later. It's not significant for the time being. We got some more serious issues to deal with. Okay, so the Security Cabinet unanimously backed the plan by Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir to capture the Strip and hold the territories, escalate the attacks, and block Hamas from accessing humanitarian aid. As I dove deeply into the whole, what Israel is trying to do with the humanitarian aid distribution, or what they have done so far in an effort to design this incredibly chaotic set of circumstances in an effort to destabilize the Strip, in an effort to harm the Palestinian population in the Strip. They are going to directly pick and choose who gets the aid and who doesn't militarily. No pretense of retreat. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich openly embraced the term occupation, saying, "We are finally going to occupy the Gaza Strip. We will stop being afraid of the word." He vowed that there will be no retreat from the territories we have conquered, not even in exchange for hostages. The plan calls for moving Gaza's 2.1 million people, most of them already displaced, towards the far south, a region bombed repeatedly and barely able to sustain those already there. Humanitarian agencies warned this will have a devastating impact on the weakest and most vulnerable. The cabinet also approved in principle a parallel plan to bypass the UN-led aid system and hand control of aid distribution to private contractors under Israeli military oversight. The Humanitarian Country Team, a collective of UN agencies and humanitarian NGOs, condemned the plan, warning it contravenes fundamental humanitarian principles and appears designated or designed to reinforce control over life-sustaining items as a pressure tactic as a part of the military strategy. They further warned that the plan would mean large parts of Gaza, including the less mobile and most vulnerable people, will continue to go without supplies. The HCT added, "It is dangerous driving civilians in the militarized zones to collect rations, threatening lives, including those of humanitarian workers, while further entrenching forced displacement. Captives deprioritized. No captives have been free since Israel resumed its offensive. The Hostage and Missing Families Forum accused the government of sacrificing their loved ones, calling it the Smotrich-Netanyahu plan for sacrificing hostages and abandoning national resilience and security. Gaza pushed towards famine. Israel's blocked nearly all aid since the 2nd of March. The UN says famine is approaching. Bakeries are shut. Warehouses are empty and hospitals are collapsing. Yet Israeli officials claim still that there is no shortage. Delaying escalation until Trump's visit, Israeli officials have indicated that the intensified military operation in Gaza, known as Operation Gideon Chariots, will commence after U.S. President Donald Trump's visit to the region, scheduled for May 13th to the 16th. Israeli senior defense official stated, "If there is no hostage deal, Operation Gideon Chariots will begin with great intensity and will not stop until all of its goals are achieved. Israel's plan is a full-scale plan for conquest, mass displacement, and indefinite subjugation." Trump apparently just commented on this plan. I haven't even seen it yet, but I suspect he's going to say it's great. Trump's response when asked if he supports Israel's upcoming invasion and occupation of Gaza.
We're going to help the people of Gaza get some food. People are starving, and we're going to help them get some food. A lot of people are making it very, very bad. If you look, Hamas is making it impossible because they're taking everything that's...
Yeah, that's bullshit. That is 100%. I will say it. That's bullshit. Okay?
Brought in, but we're going to help the people of Gaza because they're being treated very badly by
Hamas. Not Israel. Israel's treating them very good and will treat them even better. They will treat them even better by giving them the food to whoever they see. Yeah, they're framing it. He's framing it as a rescue mission. Oh, this is low key. This is very Brandonian. Okay, this is the Brandonification of Trump. Not to say that he's like losing his marbles. He already has, and he is Brandonizing in that way at an alarming rate. But this is Brandonizing in a different way, where he looks at something that Israel is doing that is utterly unconscionable and then tries to reframe it in a more positive way. This is literally the same as like Brandon being like, "No, we're putting a Gaza port there." Like, what do you mean? We love giving humanitarian aid to the Palestinians. Like, we're building a port. Gaza Aid Pier Part 2. Like, that's what this is. This is a more liberal framework to operate off of. For the past couple of months, he was very reactionary. He would just be like, "Yeah, we're just going to ethnically cleanse all Palestinians." What the do you mean? Well, I'm going to put a Trump Tower in the Gaza Riviera, right? Like, he kept saying that. And now he's basically figured out, or at least his aides have told him, like, dude, you can't keep saying that. You have to soften your approach. You have to at least make it seem like we're trying to help the Palestinians. So at least on the optics side, he's trying to massage the argument a little bit to make it seem as though this is a positive thing.
Hamas. Thank you very much.
Yeah, he's you know, hitting that Brandon line perfectly. All right, let's keep going.
When it lands.
Do not report for reserve duty for moral and ethical reasons. This operation will result in the killing of hostages in captivity, will result in the deaths of those who have been kidnapped.
This week will renew focus on a peace process that has broken down and in need of an urgent solution. Food is scarce, supplies have stalled, and the death toll is over 52,000.
Well, I've been speaking to Jan Egeland, who's Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council, and I began by asking him about his organisation's opposition to Israel's plan to take over distribution of aid to Gaza.
It's a fundamental for us as humanitarians that aid should be delivered in an impartial, independent and neutral manner to those who need it the most, where they need it the most. And this new Israeli scheme is really an ultimatum saying the little aid we will allow in, we will dictate who will get it, where and if they get it, and they will only provide it, it seems, to a few concentration points in southern Gaza. So people who cannot move to those places will be eliminated from aid. We cannot be part of a dictatum coming from a party to an armed conflict on whom should receive humanitarian aid.
I mean, will that not leave Israel saying, well, we're happy to take aid in, but it's the aid agencies who are refusing to hand it over?
No, it would leave the Israel to actually be responsible morally and legally for all aid that is given and for all of those who are excluded, because we cannot be part of that. We are not asked to do that anywhere else in the world. We've never agreed to that anywhere else in the world the last 100 years.
What do you think this is part of? Because we're also hearing today Israel's announcement of a potential full occupation of Gaza. It's all very unclear exactly what's happening, but are these things integrated, do you think?
Yeah, they may be. I mean, it seems they are now only following a cruel military logic that will not bring the long-suffering hostages home to their families in Israel, and will prevent the women and children, the innocent in Gaza, from getting aid. I don't understand why they would do this. This will come to...
Why would they do this? Maybe because they're Nazis and America loves that they're Nazis, and it actually perfectly aligns with their exterminationist interests. You know? Like, that's it. Now, of course, this is like, brother, do you really believe that the hostages are still being held / even alive? Some of them, yeah. Why wouldn't they be? Dude, if hostages have been kept alive through intense bombing campaigns, the Al-Qassam brigades recently, I think like what, a week ago, released a video of them digging out Israeli hostages from underneath the rubble because Israel had blown up an area where hostages were. I think I'm not crazy for saying this. Like, I mean, we already know that there is a military doctrine in Israel called the Hannibal Directive, right? Which is that in order not to give Hamas any leverage whatsoever, in order not to give any Palestinian resistance group any leverage over Israel whatsoever, they would rather kill Israeli citizens or Israeli soldiers. Initially, it was about Israeli soldiers instead of dealing with Hamas at the negotiations table. And they did. They killed a bunch of people on 10/7 as well, on October 7. This much was suspected This was suspected initially. I didn't entertain it until there was confirmed evidence. There was some confirmed evidence that came from the kibbutzim, from some of the Israeli, people that lived in the kibbutzim that saw the tanks firing into the kibbutzim. There was also some suspicions that helicopters were peppering the cars full of Israeli civilians that were trying to escape the Nova Festival. And Yoav Gallant confirmed it as recently as last month when he was doing his little media tour. Yoav Gallant is the former defense minister of Israel. He was the defense minister during October 7. And and I think that the considering that actually kibbutzim are people who live in a kibbutz. The kibbutz is a village community. Just a heads up. I know. Yes, I know that. Anyway, as I was saying, it's not. I don't think it's a stretch to assume that Israel is trying to actively kill hostages, because they see it as a serious hurdle to their military ambitions, their military strategy. This will 100% be used as a strategy to arbitrarily mass arrest random Hamas cooperators who receive aid, much like how Israeli travel visa system has been used historically. Small touch on the Gaza plan. Yeah, they don't care about the hostages.
To haunt Israel and the United Kingdom, the United States and Germany, that can.
Kibbutzim is the plural form of kibbutz. I know. And kibbutznik, right? Kibbutznik would be someone who lives in a kibbutz, right? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's continue, please.
Influence Israel has to do so. If not, they will have their fingerprints all over this catastrophe.
I mean, if they are looking to get the Gazan population into the south, I suppose it gives them the option of pursuing the Trump plan to get people out, to get them over the border into Egypt. Do you think that's what's going on?
Well, I fear that the borders to both Israel and Egypt will remain closed, and will be more and more people be concentrated in some kind of an internment camp where they will say this family member can go and get a box of 20 kilos once a week without water, without cooking oil, without anything, to barely survive if we can facial recognize that one member of that one family. I mean, it's total control of a civilian population and deciding who will suffer, who will be have aid, who will not.
Do you think the international institutions, the UN, are functioning effectively at the moment? I mean, who can bring any pressure on Israel over the aid issue, first of all?
The reality of the matter is the only country that can actually apply pressure at this point is the United States of America. And Donald Trump is not going to do that. And Biden was not going to do that either and didn't do that. And we have no reason to believe, the reality of the matter is we have no reason to believe that Kamala would do anything different, considering that she routinely said that she was lockstep in tow with the Biden administration. Okay? She said there's no daylight between her and Biden. And Biden did the exact same shit. On the optics side, maybe Biden would try and massage the narrative a little bit, say, oh, I'm so mad at Benjamin Netanyahu. But on the reality side, they didn't care. So the only options in this circumstance are to apply pressure militarily from other regional actors that make it as costly as possible for Israel to continue this initiative. Internal struggle from anti-Zionists all the way to hostage families that keep protesting against the Israeli government, and try to get people to refuse to go back on reserve duty as they are doing a call to arms, and also potentially China. European sanctions could help, but I don't think European sanctions would. I don't think European sanctions would help without American Europeans will not sanction Israel without America. I would be shocked if they did that. Like, legitimately shocked if Europe would actually take action against Israel without America's go-ahead. The reason why I say that is because Germany is the responsible party for the International Criminal Court, okay? Germany is not only the manufacturing engine and the industrial engine of the entirety of the European Union. Germany is the country that has basically designed the entirety of the European Union. They are the de facto controllers of the EU. And the reason why I'm bringing up Germany is because it's in their constitution that they must abide by the International Criminal Court because of, the whole Nazi stuff, right? And even then, Germany has been inconsistent in its messaging about whether or not they would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. Once Germany came out and said that, it was over. That means that they're getting their notes from the United States of America on this issue, and they will not stray away from the United States. I'll give you one additional example. They don't really give a shit about what Israel does, right? European countries don't care about, like, the European politicians don't care about what Israel is doing to the Palestinians. They don't care at all because, they're killing Muslims, and Europe doesn't really care about that at all. However, they do care about Russia. They are legitimately fearful of Russian, further Russian occupation into Ukrainian territory, and maybe even Russia spreading its invasion, right? They're afraid of that. That is a legitimate fear that European politicians have. And yet, despite all of their claims of how they are going to help Ukraine separately from the United States of America, if the U.S. won't help Ukraine, we will. Like, all of these talks, all of this posturing took place. They haven't actually stepped out of line with the interests of America at all in this process, if you noticed. The reason as to why they haven't is because they are still, in my opinion, very firmly within the sphere of Western influence, the sphere of American influence. So if they're not even stepping, by the way, Germany do not control the EU. EU has a parliament and commission. Do not speak about the EU. If you're not from any EU country, I'm from EU. Things are voted in the parliament. Okay, thanks. Yeah, Germany has been very consistent. They've said repeatedly that it would be unconscionable for an Israeli state official to be arrested on German soil in direct, that is a direct violation of the German constitution as far as abiding by the International Criminal Court standards, abiding by the International Criminal Court's arrest warrants. That is insane. Okay? Stating that means that they care more about American interests and following America on this issue than their own constitution. So that's something to consider. As a middle-income American, what can I do in my day-to-day to make conditions in Gaza better? I participate in BDS list protests and donate where I can. Wondering if you have any options on action items. Yeah, just doing that and continuing to do that and continuing to try to get people to understand what is actually taking place in Gaza is the best possible thing you can do. Change does not happen overnight. It's marginal. But as someone who has been an advocate for Palestinians for the past decade and a half, okay, I will tell you that a lot of change has taken place in terms of the public sentiment, in terms of the public attitude that has dramatically shifted. So you have to keep up the pressure. That's it. So, as I was stating, the discourse in Germany is dead. Berlin announced a city partnership with Tel Aviv today. Our new government is completely hopeless. Yeah. Look. The reason why I brought up Germany, or the reason why I brought up the European partners in this process is because someone in the chat brought up that maybe the EU would turn around and actually apply pressure to Israel. And I'm telling you that is very unlikely. If they actually decouple from American foreign policy interests in the region, if they actually did that, they could at least they could apply a lot of stress, a lot of pressure to Israel. 100%. They have that power. It's just that they will not do that because they are functionally still a vassal for American interests. Their politicians are. The population and the politicians are directly at odds on this issue. Okay? How Hamas sees the current moment. An exclusive interview with Osama Hamdan from Jeremy Scale. In a wide-ranging interview drop site, the senior Hamas leader discusses negotiation strategy, why disarmament is a red line, his direct talks with U.S. officials, and more. Drop site got an exclusive interview with the senior Hamas official, Osama Hamdan, said that the movement will not capitulate to any demands from Israel or the U.S. to lay down its weapons and vowed that Hamas will reject any temporary ceasefire deal that does not include a clear path to a total Israeli withdrawal from Gaza and an end to the genocide. No need for a short-term ceasefire, said Osama Hamdan, one of the longest-serving senior officials within Hamas. What the Israelis are offering is we will give you a ceasefire for a short while, and then we'll come back and kill you again. So what's the idea of giving you food 12, 40 days, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, and then coming back to kill you? It means that you endorse the genocide and you accept that for your own people. It has been 2 months since the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal signed in January between Hamas and Israel came to an end, and Israel imposed a full... Do you condemn Dropsite News for providing material aid to Hamas? No, I do not. I am condoning Dropsite News for getting an incredibly important interview like this. We already know the details, but since March 2, Israel has prevented all food, water, medicine, fuel, and other supplies from reaching the besieged enclave, plunging Gaza into the worst humanitarian crisis in the 19-month war, according to the UN. On March 18th, Israel resumed its scorched earth bombing, killing more than 2,400 Palestinians, mostly women and children. During this period, regional mediators, Qatar and Egypt, have failed to convince Israel to return to its original three-phase framework, which stipulated a complete withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza and the declaration of a permanent ceasefire. Instead, Israel has issued a series of sweeping new demands as a condition for any halt to its genocidal operations. Central among those are the total demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, the exiling of Hamas leaders, and the removal of Hamas as the governing authority in Gaza. I believe that Israelis don't believe in any solution with the Palestinians. When they talk about disarming the Palestinians, it is their idea of killing the hope of the Palestinians to be liberated. And even then, if they want to push them out, the Palestinians will have no way to defend themselves, Hamdan said, referring to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's stated plan for a final stage. Because remember, it was, just release the hostages and it's fine. Now it's release the hostages and surrender in its entirety to complete Israeli occupation, and it's fine. The goalpost has shifted. The goalpost now is release the hostages, surrender weapons, and then also be ethnically cleansed from the land, for the record, because that is the final stage of the final solution, which is to remove all Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. Hamas has said that they would release all the hostages on numerous occasions since October 17, 2023. Okay? For a permanent ceasefire, permanent cessation of hostilities. And Hamas has also said that they would dissolve their political power and their military as well, as long as there is a standing military to defend the Gaza Strip and abide by international law. This is a perfectly understandable demand to make for a country, for a population that is under belligerent occupation and is experiencing a genocide, just like it is perfectly valid for Ukraine to deny Russian requests to dissolve its military. And Russia is not doing a genocide. Russia is still doing an incredibly bloody annexation campaign, but Russia is not doing a genocide, right? And even then, it is perfectly understandable for Ukraine to want to maintain its sovereignty and not remove its military. That would be insane. That is a death sentence. If they were to do that, then you would see Russia doing a genocide, potentially. To the genocide, to the final stage, Netanyahu's stated plan for the final stage of the genocide that includes forcibly removing the population from Gaza. Exactly. When they talk about disarming the Palestinians, not only Hamas, the Palestinians, it means that they want the Palestinians to surrender. And when you surrender, you will have to accept the will of the occupier. I just want to say, as a Palestinian, seeing you relentlessly continue to talk about Palestine when so many people, even leftists, don't exactly keep it as a main focus of theirs, doesn't go unnoticed, is one of the few places where I just don't feel forsaken. Yes. Hamdan said that Hamas was surprised to witness Egyptian mediators present an Israeli plan that included terms about total demilitarization of Gaza. Why were we astonished to see them talking about this issue? Because it's an Israeli issue, and as a mediator, you're not supposed just to admit any suggestion from the Israeli side. You have to deal with that. You have to talk directly to the Israelis and say, this will not work, Hamdan said. If Hamas said, we want Netanyahu to hand power to give up Tel Aviv for the Palestinians, for example, they will directly answer, this will not happen. Why are they not talking to the Israelis in the same way? Hamdan said that the Palestinians have both a moral obligation and a legal mandate under international law to employ armed resistance to fight an Israeli occupation that is repeatedly ruled illegal in international courts and is condemned as a system of apartheid by the world's leading human rights organizations. This, by the way, is 100% correct. This is correct. Okay? Saying this correct thing regardless of whether it's coming from the mouth of a Hamas official, it does not change the reality at all. It's just, this is correct. They are right. He is right for saying this. And I say this as well. And in the same way, when I say the Houthi militant resistance to implement a blockade in the Red Sea or to make the genocide of Palestinians costly to Israel is the morally correct position, and not only the morally correct position, but the correct position under international law. Like, this is something that people should be doing. It is the appropriate and correct thing to do. If you call that a defense of terrorism or whatever the fuck, like, I'm sorry, you're delusional. You can try to package it in any way, shape, or form that you want to, and try to silence this truth, but this is the reality. There's never been a moment where resistance against any sort of imperial power, settler colonial violence or whatnot has not been considered terrorism, has not been considered to be illegal. Of course it's going to be considered illegal by Western powers that are aligned with Israel. Of course. Of course. You say, so terrorism is justified. I say it's not. It's not terrorism. Okay? This is not like what Hamas and other formations of Palestinian resistance did. Just like the Nat Turner Rebellion during chattel slavery would be considered terrorism, okay? An act of terror. That is correct. Having said that, every single thing that they've done in terms of resisting against Israeli occupation, which Israel is, again, a belligerent occupier of the Gaza Strip and bombed the Gaza Strip into oblivion, conducting a genocidal operation in the Gaza Strip, that is the actual terrorism. That is the real terrorism. And that is a far more consequential and far worse act of terrorism than October 7. They've done multiple October 7s every week at this point. Okay? You can't talk about de-weaponizing the nation who is currently under occupation while they're occupied by the most powerful army in the region, he said. Hamas did not invent the resistance for Palestine. In fact, the Palestinians resisted the British occupation, and since then, the Israeli occupation for decades. Talking about de-weaponizing the Palestinians, it will not solve the problem. The new generation will fight because you are oppressing the nation all the time. So there's no option for Palestinians to get rid of this occupation without resistance. No option. Hamas has repeatedly proposed arrangements to end the occupation since the early 1990s, and Israel rejected them all. Last week, it dismissed Hamas's most recent offer, which would have seen all Israeli captives in Gaza returned to Israel as a part of a multi-year deal. They have rejected it, and they may reject it another time. But this is also an answer for the international community when they keep asking the Palestinians, okay, how can we solve this problem? Hamdan explained, you can't solve the problem by talking about the security of Israel. You have to solve the problem by talking about the rights of Palestinians who are giving you the option, which can fit exactly within international law, with the international resolutions, which can solve the problem and give the Palestinian people their rights. Hamdan also outlined Hamas's rationale for offering a 5 to 7 year truce with Israel, known as Hudna in Arabic. The main goal for this long-term Hudna is that each side has to believe that he will not be attacked by the other side, which can at least generate a kind of security. And it's a chance to build trust that there may be a chance for a kind of stability and security, he said. That was the experience, for example, in South Africa. It was the experience in Vietnam. It was the experience with every situation of occupation, not only the Palestinian situation. So we are still committed to a very serious political idea, which is the long-term ceasefire. Benjamin Netanyahu does not want this because in this peace process, in this cessation of hostility, Palestinians will return back to increased demand for their own sovereignty, especially now when Americans and the Western world is completely aware of their plight. I haven't seen any new polling on this beyond the unfavorability of Israel, but I suspect that if you were to ask the Americans now and Western nations now, their populations, if you were to poll them on, is Israel committing a genocide in Gaza, the numbers would be insane. Like unheard of in comparison to, is Israel an apartheid state? If they asked that question maybe 5 years ago when Israel still was very much an apartheid state. This is the real fear, because once the military pressure is done, once there's no more military pressure, all of a sudden people are going to look at what Israel has done in Gaza. Western media is going to be able to enter the Gaza Strip. Do you understand how damaging that would be to Netanyahu's goals of ethnically cleansing the Gaza Strip? This is the reason why they cannot stop the military conquest here. They cannot stop it. Israel does not want the U.S. talking to Hamas. We know that already. Served as representative in Iran and Lebanon as his chief international relations. He was one of the top advisors to Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated by Israel last summer in Tehran. In a wide-ranging interview, Western media will not enter Gaza. I'm saying that if there was a 7-year ceasefire implemented in the aftermath of such a negotiation, then yes, there would be media allowed in the Gaza Strip. What are you talking about? Media used to be able to go into the Gaza Strip in the past. That's why friends of the show like Hind Hassan have been able to secure interviews with Yahya Sinwar. The last ever Western media interview with Yahya Sinwar was conducted by Hind Hassan. That was in the Gaza Strip. That's where it happened. That's where it took place. People used to be able to go to the Gaza Strip. What's the name? Daniel Day-Lewis wrote about his experiences in Gaza in 2005, where he went and he visited and he saw and he was shocked at the Israeli occupation as depravity. In 2005, he went and he wrote about it. Anthony Bourdain went to the Gaza Strip. So, yeah. What is this? Did you already talk about the link I just sent? It just got on?
So everything.
What? No, that was discarded. We'll talk about that as well. The anti-BDS federal level legislation has been discarded at this point, I think. Yeah. All right, let's continue. In the wide-ranging interview, Hamdan said that Hamas believes the January ceasefire agreement would have been unlikely had Donald Trump not won the U.S. election. I think it helped. If Kamala Harris won the elections, I think it would be the same policy of the Biden administration, which supported the Israelis totally. They made themselves a part of the war and fight against the Palestinians, he said. We know that Trump people, they have done a good job in order to make the January ceasefire happen, but it's not enough. We have to be honest and serious. It's not enough. It's ironic because this was my assessment of the situation as well, even though I think he's glazing. He's trying to glaze Trump. He's trying to do the Putin thing to Trump. He's like, yeah, he's good guy Trump. He did that for us so that he hopes that a little bit of kind sentiment expressed in the direction of Trump will go a long way in terms of Trump being more amenable to the very reasonable demands being made by Hamas. Hassan Gay. Nice. Hamdan rejected what he called the Israeli propaganda term to describe what should happen in Gaza the day after the war ends. The Israelis, they've used this the day after term in order to convince everyone what will happen in Gaza is that they will take over the situation within a few weeks and they will get rid of the resistance and there'll be issue of some people who are living on the land of Gaza, he said. There is a day after the genocide stopped, and this day is supposed to be a Palestinian day, a Palestinian national day, because we have stopped the genocide and we have decided by ourselves, the Palestinians, what we are supposed to do. Hamdan said, once a political solution is reached to end the genocide, Hamas would be willing to relinquish governance of Gaza to an independent body of Palestinians or a technocratic committee. There was a suggestion from the Egyptian side. To have committee leaders, independent leaders from Gaza, to take control in Gaza for a while, and then we can go to general elections. We've said yes, because if they were nationalists and they're working for Gaza's benefit and the people's, why not have them, Hamdan said. He added that Hamas and other Palestinian political parties had put forward 40 to 45 names to the Palestinian Authority as nominees for a 15-member body to assume control of Gaza once Hamas formally steps down. They have not received any answers. So, they are willing to step aside as well. So remember this. Whenever people say like, oh, Hamas, if they lay down their arms or whatever the fuck, like, oh, Israel will stop doing genocide. That's not the case at all. Okay? If Hamas stepped aside from governance in Gaza is not the real point of contention here. What Israel wants to do is full-blown extermination. They do not want Palestinians to be on the Gaza Strip. This is the Israeli government's position. Now let's look at what the Israeli population's position is on this. Channel 13 poll today, 46% of Israelis oppose the IDF operation. This is good because, as I've stated, Israel plans to occupy and flatten all of Gaza, right? This is the new thing that not the new thing. They've been doing this, but like this is the official confirmation, right? They voted on it. They said, yes, we're doing it. We're going forward with it. Now it's in full display in 4K. in a way where like even Jake Tapper or Dana Fash cannot avoid talking about this, okay? Because remember, I can say this every day of the week, but it doesn't matter, right? Dropsite News can do coverage on this. It doesn't matter. Democracy Now! Can do coverage on this. It doesn't matter. But this is the type of shit that the New York Times has to report on. And when the New York Times reports on this, all of a sudden, your mom and dad are going to hear about it. And there is no way to fundamentally massage the narrative here that they want to do permanent occupation. Okay? And an ethnic cleansing campaign. Maybe they won't say it's a full-blown ethnic cleansing campaign, but, you know, it makes it a lot harder to avoid that reality, to avoid that ultimate goal that they want. Israel plans to occupy and flatten Gaza, all of Gaza, if no hostage and ceasefire deal is reached by the end of President Trump's trip to the Middle East 2 weeks from now. And Channel 13 poll says, I take it you haven't seen the New York Times headline today about this? Oh, no. How did they cover it? Oh, no. 46% of Israelis oppose the IDF operation. 39% support it. 53% think Netanyahu pushes the operation for political survival. 57% think the operation endangers the hostages. So not exactly great. A little too close to the 50-50 for my comfort, okay? The first article that pops up, Netanyahu warns of Oh my God, dude. They use every brain cell that they have to massage the narrative as aggressively as they can. Netanyahu warns of intensive escalation in Gaza campaign. Holy shit, dude. This is utterly ridiculous. Oh my Lord. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that a new plan calls for a forceful entry into the territory and would involve Palestinians relocating to the south. Forceful entry. Yuck. Anyway, let's get back to this.
Of all, if America is...
Is this justified by saying their only goal is to go after Hamas? No, that's the justification that Israel tries to place, but like... but the New York Times knows better. The New York Times also has legal experts that they pay money to that know international humanitarian law, okay? They know international human rights law. They know that. It's not like they are oblivious to this reality. NPR covered it better than the New York Times did, where they said the humanitarian aid distribution scheme that the American government is trying to do alongside Israel is literally a direct violation of international humanitarian law. It is a war crime. You cannot have the military do aid distribution and choose and pick and choose who you're giving aid to. That is ridiculous. Also, Trump wants to defund NPR, by the way, which is, oh my God, it makes me so mad. Okay. Israel is heading for another disaster in Gaza fueled by Netanyahu's delusional plans. This is from Amos Harel. If you want to understand a more liberal Zionist perspective on this, okay? The expanded Gaza offensive approved by the cabinet is likely to fail, leading to prolonged entanglement and heavy deaths of soldiers, hostages, and Palestinians without defeating Hamas. Netanyahu follows the far right, while IDF leadership hopes for Trump's intervention. Let me be blunt. We are marching into another disaster in the Gaza Strip. If U.S. President Donald Trump opts to stay out of the matter during his visit to the Gulf next week, Israel will begin escalating its military operations in Gaza once he flies back to Washington. Even The Onion couldn't come up with this stuff. What is this? It's gone. Yeah, they're trying to defund. They are trying to defund PBS and defund NPR. It is ridiculous. Let's finish.
It's not
this first.
part of that international pressure.
No, I mean, it's a total collapse of international diplomacy, of global solidarity, of sanity.
It's 2 months since Israel stopped allowing aid into Gaza, and that obviously affects the hostages as well as the people of Gaza. What are your people on the ground telling you the situation is now?
I have nearly 100 colleagues on the ground inside Gaza, and they say starvation is spreading, disease is spreading, there is no clean... We are, Norwegian Refugee Council, providing clean drinking water to tens of thousands of people. We will have fuel for another week of doing that. It will collapse. All of the bakeries have closed. The distribution points have stopped functioning. There is no aid in Gaza now because there's been a 2 months blockade. I remember when Assad in Syria did the same. I mean, it was incredible, the outcry in London, in Washington, in Berlin, in Paris, and there was massive sanctions against Assad for doing that. Where's the outrage now when Netanyahu is doing
I mean, so much
You know,
worse.
Zionists.
Like, Arab states never ordered the expulsion of inhabitants with Professor Joseph Massad. We can have that conversation later, but I do want to. How Israel won the West, the big picture, is an hour-long documentary on it. We can get to that later when we go back to the Gaza segment. But the reason as to why, I mean, I wanted to cover the top level issues here, since Israel's moving in this direction.